Hello, Austin County. Today we are in the living room with Dennis Geesaman, and he is running for State House District 85. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. Now, I understand that Geesaman kind of goes into a nickname of yours.
All right. So because of the last name Geesaman, ever since I was a little kid, I've been called Goose Geesaman. So when I was in high school and then in the military and in college and even after college in the Air Force and elsewhere, a lot of people didn't even know my first name was Dennis. So I've always been Goose Geesaman. So I actually got that on the ballot here. It says Dennis, quote, Goose Geesaman on the ballot.
All right. And you know I have to say it. We're going to go, so you're going to talk to me, Goose, right?
So the call sign Goose worked great in the Air Force. I was a fighter pilot for over 20 years, almost 21 years in the Air Force. So my call sign was always Goose, but I was Goose way before Top Gun. As a matter of fact, I think maybe they stole it from me, maybe not, but
hey, check out some copyright infringement. They're right there. I always thought the fighter pilot names were interesting, and I always wondered how they got them. Well, that's how you got yours. So
yes.
Interesting. Okay, well, you've already told us a little bit about yourself, but I guess the big thing is tell us about who you are, and then why did you decide you wanted to run for office?
So right out of high school, I went to the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, got an engineering degree there. Then I was in the Air Force 21 years as a fighter pilot, and to keep myself out of the clubs somewhat, I worked on weekends and got an MBA. So that's come in useful both in business and in politics also. So I got an MBA. And then after I got out of the Air Force, we settled back in Flatonia, started a cow-calf and hay operation about 30 years ago. And then also while I was doing that, I got involved in city government, and did 12 years as either city council or the mayor of Flatonia.
Oh, wow.
And we were involved in all sorts of local civic events and politics. I was the president of the church council for 8 years. I was the American Legion treasurer for 18 years. We also restored a historic hotel in Flatonia. If anybody's ever seen the old Ollie Hotel, it's an old train hotel. We restored that and ran that for actually just short of 20 years. So for a period of time, my name was no longer Goose; it was Hotel Maintenance. And
I love it.
And so we did that. And while I was doing that, I also got hired by Southwest Airlines. So I was actually flying out of Houston Hobby, trucking in I-10 once or twice a week and into Houston Hobby and flying for Southwest Airlines.
Wow. Okay, I have to know, when you said you were a fighter pilot, did you ever get in a dogfight, like a real one?
No, not.
Or was that
really,
classified?
Not really.
Okay.
Every day we're training though.
Right.
I always said, what am I going to do when I grow up here? Because it was, I mean, running around 500 miles an hour and simulating guns and missiles at your adversary was quite an event.
I love it. All right. Okay. So we know that you can, work under pressure and all that kind of stuff. So here's my big question. All right. So when you are writing and voting on laws, okay, what are the values and life experiences that guide you when you're going to make those decisions?
Well, I kind of skip back to why am I running?
Okay.
And that's, I was ready to retire from all the stuff in town to my ranch. And I just said, I just don't feel right. I don't feel like we're being fully represented here as the grassroots, common sense conservatives, folks out here. So I looked at it, and the things that really kicked that off are I set as a theme is transparency and accountability.
Right.
And the one thing that really got me off the couch was I don't care what you think of, because a lot of people have good opinions, a lot of people have bad opinions about Ken Paxton. But when just after he was elected, when they moved to impeach him, that's just not right.
Okay. So it was real life, real visceral. This is what I feel like.
Yeah. And then what brought it on further and egged me to go on, because at that point we started looking for somebody to run for this office against the incumbent. And I've had several people that we scouring around. It covers 6 counties, so it's a large area, mostly rural, small towns, Texas. Covers 6 counties. Had several people that raised their hand halfway, and then after we got into it, they put their hand back down. So I said, man, I guess I've got to do it. So I'm in it.
There you go. I tell you what, I gave you a lot of respect because I wouldn't want to do it. All right. So say you get elected. Here are some things. Okay. Border security, crime, property taxes, all of these things, you get to the Capitol, what is going to be your guiding star on that, making decisions?
I could run through some of those key items one by one. Some of them have been solved by the federal government with the border, but we need to be ready to plug that hole if it opens back up again. So a rapid response task force is something the governor and the legislature has talked about, but they need to act on it. So that's as far as immigration. As far as now, myself and my campaign manager, we've probably knocked on over 5,000 doors so far, and the two things that really crop up a lot are property taxes, but property taxes are an indication of out of control spending. That's a symptom. That's not really the root of the problem here, although we need to address the symptoms too. But out of control spending, just for example, we just finished the 89th legislature last summer, and the 88th legislature would have been 2 years before that. Going into the 88th legislature, the state budget was about $250 billion. Then going into the 89th legislature, the budget was, coming out of the 89th legislature, the budget was $352 billion. So that's a 40% increase in 3 years. I don't consider that conservative. I don't think that's the values that we have out here.
Yeah, that's a big one. All right, so we were talking about budget. Now, budget, obviously, it determines things like schools, highways, healthcare, public safety. You know, which of these or others do you consider to be your top priority?
I just across the board evaluate every item and see what's essential, what we need, and not go for the extra, not go for the fluff. Our highways are well funded, but there can be alternates to that type of transportation. Like there could be some rail, and I do not agree with any sort of high-speed rail. That's the amount of eminent domain and the amount of infrastructure that would have to be built to bring that to fruition is ridiculous. But there are many places where we have infrastructure that's already there, and it can be used for just a lower slow-speed rail. And with satellite links now, you could relax on a train and have internet. But I was gonna say it's quite a bit. So like highways, like you said, they're there. Okay, I'm gonna jump in here. I was a school teacher for 32 years, so of course schools are a big thing for me. And I know, like with the vouchers coming up and all that kind of stuff, like where, not to put you on the spot terribly, but sure,
obviously,
happy to talk about.
I say obviously you're very into education if you bother to get an MBA and whatever else. So
yeah, there was a school program for the fifth graders. I did 15 years, once a week for 3 months with all the fifth graders. It was called Adopt a Pilot. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I haven't.
And so we just go in and talk about a flying experience, and you get to talk about some basic science and everything from Bernoulli's principle to other principles and geography and weather and it just kind of rehash where you flew in the last week. So I did that for 15 years, and I found that very rewarding. So, and I also believe, here's my basic philosophy. I think that every child should have an opportunity for a good education.
Right.
But I also believe that in some ways competition will always push towards excellence.
Oh yeah.
So the ESAs, the school choice, I know there's a lot of pushback on that, and I think there's some big problems with it, but it's inevitable that we're going to go some way or some form in that direction. I think they left some giant holes where you could drive a truck through with problems. Okay, what is fair competition between a private school and a public school? I mean, who has to take the students? Who has to have all the testing? So those are all big issues. I understand. So it needs to have as best as possible an even playing field. But and school choice is kind of an interesting flip between, you normally think of the more conservative areas out in the country would be for school choice, but they're not necessarily.
Right.
Because everybody identifies with their school.
Right.
The community identifies with their school, so they see any change as a threat, and it can be promoted as a threat. Whereas in the suburbs and in the bigger cities, the
school choice is a little different.
they see that as an opportunity out of a failing system.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is one we could go on for hours, but we'll move on.
Okay.
All right. So kind of going on that difficult budget choices, because of course, everybody runs to the money and runs from the money. And so it's like, you have everybody with their hand out saying, can I, would you? And so when those come up, how are you going to make those decisions? What is your criteria, I guess, to evaluate
Okay.
some of those? And I mean, just pick one.
I'll pick one here in just the budget in general and property taxes, because like I said, in knocking on doors, probably the two biggest things that have come up are property taxes and which I say is totally tied to out of control spending. And what's also come up lately is Islamization. I was just amazed how that has just flushed to the top there recently as far as concerns I'm hearing from people. But
right.
As far as property taxes, one of the problems is we've always resorted to property tax contraction. The what do you call it when the exemptions, bringing up exemptions. And what happens when you do exemptions on property taxes, that's like squeezing the balloon over here, but it doesn't control the rates or the appraisals. They can make up the difference, and they've been making it up with appraisals. I don't know how many folks have had, holy cow, my appraisal's going up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% in 1 year.
Yeah.
There's ways to approach that. For example, some of the proposals that the governor has come up with were along the same lines of what I was thinking. If you limit the amount that an appraisal can go up every year. Okay. Florida's already done that. I think they set a limit at 3%, and even California, back when it's more sane days, Proposition 13 back in 1978, they limited the amount an appraisal can go up a year. So that's one way to control it. And then also the idea that anytime you increase rates, that requires it always is going to require a vote, not if it goes up 2% or anything. Any increase in rates or any increase in overall property taxes requires a vote. And the governor's proposing actually a 2/3 approval. So that would put a crimp on the growth over here. And then going into the 88th legislature, we had a $27 billion surplus. And going into the 89th legislature, we had a $24 billion, and they found another $3 billion about the time they were going into the extended session. So there's money there, and all that money got spent on new and expanded programs. Okay, so if you take that and what they're already putting into exemptions right now, because the normal homestead exemption is up to like $140,000, and for elderly, which a lot of us are out here, yeah. That's gone up to $200,000 exemption on your homestead property tax. They could take what they're putting into exemptions and the surpluses that we've been having, put all ISD M&O into the budget and cover that. That'll take all that off the table for the property tax. It's not like we're saying we're not going to provide these services or we're not going to fund these things that need to be funded, but it could be moved from your property tax roll to being funded by the state budget.
Okay. I tell you, when you start talking money with the letter B in front of it, my brain kind of...
It is hard to comprehend, yeah.
Yes. Okay. You jumped one of my questions. It was property taxes and the cost of living. You did that. Okay. So we'll skip that one. That's how good you are, see? All right. The next one I had was lawmakers often place constitutional amendments before voters, right? What standards do you use to decide whether something belongs in the Texas Constitution? So if there's a vote, that's going to go before the people, knowing the Texas Constitution,
I'd probably go against the flow on that one because I think throwing stuff on its constitutional amendments is an abdication of responsibility. There were 3 things on there, for example, every one of those, how many were there? 17, 15 constitutional amendments we just passed. Every one of them, if you throw them up against the wall, they look good. But then when you think about it, we're putting in the Constitution to fund items. Wait, that's supposed to be what's in the budget for an annual review, not something you fund. For example, there were 3 things that all sound good. Expanded money for TSTC, for those technical training school. Adding more locations outside of Waco. Putting $1 billion a year set aside for water projects. The other one was for Alzheimer's study and help. Okay, those are all good ideas, but that should be in the budget. Right now, if you put it in the Constitution, that comes out before they even consider what they got left for the budget, and that takes any oversight responsibility. For example, the $1 billion a year for water projects. Well, who's going to oversee that? Where's the oversight? The oversight, the way it's set up now in that constitutional amendment, is just the governor. He appoints a board, and they dole out the money. Where's the oversight?
And that, I tell you what, that oversight, that's what a lot of people get frustrated with. Okay, so lots of good talking points. Here's the big thing. You go up state level. How are you going to stay connected to your people on the ground? What, are you a phone call away? Are you an email away? Are you going to come have dinner with me?
Phone call, email, and I think I've probably hit every church picnic and fireman's fundraiser within 100 miles. And that's a good way to do it. And I actually enjoy going out and meeting like-minded people and having a conversation with them. I get some inputs. Now, I'm running against an incumbent, and so the system doesn't like that up in Austin. Doesn't like that at all.
Right.
So I'll probably have the first year I'm there, I'll probably have if I can pull this off, which I think we have a good chance, I'll have the office at the end of the hall with no windows and not get in committees. So that is, but I think there is a groundswell of throughout Texas of where, hey, we're not being properly represented.
Well, I was gonna say, and people like to know their people and know if I call, if I email, somebody's going to get back to me, whether it's you or a secretary or a campaign person or whatever. That, at least for me, it is, because if I feel like, gee, I'm Shelley Bryan sitting here in Sealy, Texas, and you're up there, and I'm like, hey, what you're doing is affecting me, and I can't, at least voice whatever it is. It makes you a little.
That's one of my slogans I always say whenever I'm talking to anybody right up front. I said, I want to represent you, the grassroots out here, and not the lobbyists, because there's tremendous lobby money, if you want me to talk about that. Tremendous lobby money floating around Austin. I can talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's something we need to know, then by all means, this is your show. I'm just here to listen.
Probably the two biggest lobby groups right now in Austin are the Sands Corporation. Have you heard of them? But that's the Sands Corporation. It's called the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, and they have a political PAC called Defending Texas. So you see some mailers and stuff come out from Defending Texas. But that's a political PAC from the Sands Corporation. The Sands Corporation used to own casinos in Vegas. They used to have
I wondered.
And Reno, but they've sold all that property. They still have part ownership in the Dallas Mavericks, but they've sold all their casinos and their property in the U.S. The only place they have casinos right now are in Macau. And to me,
Macau?
Macau. That's the only place they have casinos. To me, that's a conduit for Chinese money. I don't like it. The other group, everybody's kind of got a mixed love-hate relationship with Texans for Lawsuit Reform, TLR. Have you ever heard of them before? But anyway, they were formed, a group of lawyers in the 1990s with totally good intentions, and I used to give them actual contributions. Their goal was to protect businesses from frivolous lawsuits. The big lawyers out of Houston would come out and get these big lawsuits, whether it's for a cup of coffee spilled and get a couple $1 million or whatever. But there were good intentions, but somehow over time they have morphed into a group that protects big business from accountability. And so that, but because of that, the big businesses have given them huge money. So it's not about transparency and accountability. It's about building up their empire and keeping power.
Right.
And so that's where we've kind of got into a problem. And so, my opponent is from both of those has had huge donations that I'm running against. So this is truly a grassroots movement.
Yeah, boots on the ground. All right. So you get elected. All right. So, and you stay for however long. At the end, okay, what would you hope or even after your first year, what would you hope your constituents would say about you?
I would hope that he listens to me and not the swamp. As I hope that's what they say. And I signed a pledge for to support term limits if that ever comes up. And I don't know the exact number for a state for, let's say, statewide offices, or for senators, or for the reps. It could be 2-3 terms. I come, I'm not a young chicken. I've got term limits built in, to some extent. But I think,
Right.
2 or 3 terms, and that's where you start to really get enveloped by the swamp up in Austin and all the money that they have flowing. So that's why it's good to have a turnover. And that's one of the reasons why I felt it was important to run and get somebody that's been in there a couple terms out.
So at the end, you want people to say, hey, he did.
He represented us.
Awesome. All right. This is your time. Talk to Austin County. What do you need to tell them?
Well, I think that I'm trying to represent the grassroots out here, and not the big money that's flowing around Austin. And there's a lot of everybody, especially if you're a Republican primary voter, you've probably gotten a tremendous amount of mail. I don't know. Have you gotten any of that?
Oh, God.
Tremendous amount of mail. And
Fortunately, there's a burn ban on, so you can't burn it. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I guess you could burn it in your garbage can, but it's amazing how ugly and how negative that is, and I see how they're, with all the establishment and the lobbyists, are circling the wagons to protect the incumbents, and you'll see that. So I've based on making contact, and the Austin establishment didn't really see this as a welling up grassroots. It kind of surprised them, I think, in the last couple of weeks. And that's when things went negative. They got to drag them down.
Right.
Got to drag me down. And I can't compete with that. If you're going by the weight of mailers for election, I lose. If you're going by the weight of mailers, but I try to get the word out. I have a couple things. I have a Sunday evening at 4:15 in Flatonia. I've got a Nashville singer who's coming in, who volunteered to do a fundraiser for me. Trey Taylor, Trey Taylor. And his dad was in the Air Force, and he just snoops around. He's conservative, and he said, "I'd like to come and do a little concert for you and help you raise some money."
Very nice.
And then the next night, over in Katy at the Midway Barbecue, if you don't know where that is, it's I have just kind of a meet and greet, and I've got some of the conservatives representatives from the House who are helping me out. They're going to come there and to help me dispel some of the lies that are being put out against me right now.
Okay. All right. And do you have a website?
Yes. It's Goose, the number 4, TexRep, TEXREP.com. Goose4TexRep.com.
Yeah. And we'll link that down in the bottom. That'll be part of your, what we put at the bottom, so people will be able to get in touch with you. Well, I know we could sit here and talk for hours, but
I could keep on riffing about where our government is going and the importance of Texas. I'll say one thing. I feel like in some ways we're looking back and saying, hey, we're in our 250 years since our American Revolution right now. But I take a little bit of exception with that. I say we're in the middle of the American Revolution right now.
Yeah.
It's something that's ongoing, and it will be ongoing. And are we trying to save Western civilization? I say no. In many ways, old Western Europe has already submitted. We're trying to save American civilization, was always from the Revolution has been very distinct from European civilization. Value of the individual, the idea that every individual has value, agency, and purpose, is created in the image of God, and should not be crushed by the system. So,
I think that's wonderful.
That's the whole purpose of the whole concept of American exceptionalism. Was formed in the American Revolution and is still ongoing. That fight is still going on right now. So we're still fighting against it.
Yeah, a lot of things going on. All right. Well, I tell you, I greatly appreciate you coming. It was a pleasure meeting you, and best of luck on your campaign.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Austin County, we're going to link everything down in the bottom. And again, we were here with Dennis Geesaman, who goes by Goose Geesaman. And he's going to be running for the State House District 85. I have to read my notes to make sure I don't mess it up. But anyway, all right, Austin County, until next time, keep smiling.